Hello, thank you for joining this session, National History Day for English Learners. My name is Leah Atnat, and I'm the Outreach and Professional Development Coordinator for Maryland Humanities. And if you're not familiar with Maryland Humanities, we are a nonprofit that runs educational programming for all ages related to history, literature, civics, and other humanities disciplines. And one of the programs we run is Maryland History Day, which is our state affiliate of the National History Day program. In this presentation, I'd like to share some information about what National History Day is, why it's a good project for your English learners, and give some tips for how to carry this out in your classroom. First, very briefly, I just want to share some of the audience who I think might find this information valuable. First of all, social studies teachers with English learners in your classrooms, teachers of sheltered ESOL social studies classes, ESOL teachers who are looking for a project-based learning activity for your ESOL classrooms, and finally, ESOL teachers who are supporting English learners in mainstream classrooms where they might be doing the History Day project as part of one of their social studies classes. I want to start off just by giving a really brief overview of what History Day is. So History Day is a long-term research project for middle and high school students. And long-term here, we're talking about usually around 4 months that students are working on this, although you can boil it down, make it shorter, you can stretch it out and make it longer if you want to. And students present their research in one of 5 creative formats, and they're able to work either individually or in groups of up to 5. And those 5 creative formats are an exhibit, a website, a documentary, a performance, or a research paper. So some of these formats are more visual, some are more tech-based, some are low-tech. So there's something to appeal to all different learning modalities, personal interests, existing skills, and skills that students want to learn. Finally, the last thing to know about History Day is that students have the opportunity to participate in contests at the district, state, and national level. And some schools will have a contest at the school level as well. It is up to you whether you want to have that be something more formal or just an informal showcase. The contest can be a great motivator for some students, but your primary duty will be to help all students develop their research and literacy skills, whether or not they are contest bound. Another thing to know about History Day is that every year there is an annual theme that is chosen by NHD, that national organization, and it is used by students all over the country. Everyone is using that same theme. All students should pick a topic that adheres in some way to the theme, and they should try to weave it throughout the whole project. It shouldn't just be something that they touch on very briefly. And the theme can be interpreted in many different ways. The theme this year is Debate and Diplomacy in History, Successes, Failures, and Consequences. So on the screen I have 2 very broad definitions to show how it can be interpreted in different ways. So a debate can be a discussion between people or groups in which they express different opinions about something. And diplomacy is the art and practice of building and maintaining relationships and conducting negotiations with people using tact and respect. So just to give a couple of examples, when people hear diplomacy, for a lot of people the first thing they think of is international diplomacy, and students might gravitate toward that to give a more global view. So they might think of things like Theodore Roosevelt's use of gunboat diplomacy to secure land to construct the Panama Canal, and then bring debate in to talk about the debates around the U.S.'s control of the Panama Canal Zone. But students might also choose to focus on a debate instead and find that spark of diplomacy in the story, like the public expression of debate that Cesar Chavez encouraged in labor protests, and the diplomacy that came in the form of negotiations with employers. Next, I want to show you what the process will look like for your students. So you can see I've broken it down into 5 different stages. The process is paced out and broken down into these steps so students aren't overwhelmed with the idea of the whole project. So first, they will be selecting a topic. They can pick almost any topic that they want to. There's a great element of choice here. The only constraint is that it should be related to that official NHD theme in some way. And they're going to want to narrow it down to something manageable. Next stage is the research stage. Students will develop and investigate their own research questions, and they'll be finding primary and secondary sources, and they can do that either in person or libraries or in online databases. Next, after they've gathered their research, they'll work on creating a thesis and building that historical argument, which can be supported with the evidence from their research. Next, everyone will be writing some sort of text. They'll turn that research into writing, support their thesis using primary sources, and weave the year's theme throughout the whole thing. Finally, in the last stage, they'll have the chance to get creative, and they'll pick one of those 5 different formats. They'll design what they want the final project to look like and put it all together and present the conclusions of their historical investigation. These thumbnail images represent final projects in each of the 5 formats. All of these projects tell their stories with a beginning, a middle, and an end, showing the context of an event and the impacts that that event had in the short and long term, and ultimately making an argument for why that event is significant in history. I encourage you to check out some student work from past years and show it to your students as well to give them inspiration for what is possible with this project. That was my brief summary of what the National History Day project is. So now I want to talk a little bit about why it's a great project for your English learners. First, for all students, NHD helps students meet MSDE standards for social studies. So first of all, National History Day is inquiry-based. So in other words, students are creating those research questions and investigating them on their own. And the project follows the inquiry arc that you can see at the bottom of this screen here. So starting with questions, applying the skills that they have, the historical thinking skills, and eventually sharing the conclusions that they come up with. Next, History Day is rooted in primary source analysis and evaluation. So they'll be looking at those historical sources, determining how they fit into their project, determining who created them, where bias lies in each of those sources. Students will create a historical argument based on the research that they did, and students will support their argument using primary sources as evidence. So this project will help students build those skills that they'll be building across their whole K-12 academic careers. And these are all skills that will also be transferable to other disciplines. In short, NHD is academically rigorous curriculum. It asks students to use not just these historical thinking skills, but many other academic skills as well. But to align with educational equity, all students, including English learners, deserve the opportunity for academic rigor and to build skills that will prepare them for high school and eventually for college. In addition to helping English learners succeed in social studies, project-based learning also builds language skills. This project has the potential to use all 4 language domains: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Students will be reading to do their research. They'll be listening if their research includes video or audio clips. All students will be writing the text of their projects and speaking to their teachers, peers, and perhaps judges about their topic and their research. NHD is an authentic task. It gives students a real reason to produce language. They will need to use English to inform others about the topics that they chose, which is by design something that they should enjoy learning about, and also to convince you of their topic's significance. Finally, social studies topics are great for building a broad vocabulary on a wide variety of subjects, and the exposure to different topics, types of texts, and opportunities for reading improves literacy. Project-based learning also improves students' social-emotional learning skills. SEL is, of course, important for all students, but might prove especially important for English learners who are adjusting to school life in a new language. This is a chance for them to discover their own interests, identities, and skills. Again, the element of choice here is so valuable. They have the choice, again, of their topic, their mode of expression, so which of those 5 formats they choose to present their work in, and whether to work as a group or individually. Choosing their own topic gives them the opportunity to learn how their values are reflected in history, whether that is the importance of scientific progress, human rights, or the impact of the arts. Next, this project can give students independence from adults. They learn how to work independently or in a group, and this independence also feeds into students developing a sense of purpose. Finally, students will have the opportunity to share their work, to reflect on it, and to take pride in what they've done. They get to think about why they made the decisions that they made, what they would have added if they could, and this is an opportunity to build their confidence and give them a sense of accomplishment. Next, I want to get into some tips for doing this project. My first suggestion is to become familiar with the NHG curriculum and get excited about it, because that excitement will rub off onto your students. The first URL on here under Maryland History Day Teacher Resource Padlet will lead you to a Padlet of teacher resources that we have created and collected. So if you are not a social studies teacher or you need a refresher on where students can do research online, not to fear, we have lots of recommendations for good quality research sites. We have worksheets, activity ideas, step-by-step guides to different parts of the project, and much more to help you get started on this. Next, I recommend that you check out what's available on the National History Day website, nhd.org. That national organization creates the rule book, which will give you more details about the expectations of the final project. NHD chooses the theme again and creates materials to inspire great topics like the theme book and the theme webinar. And they create the judging rubrics that are used at the contests. Finally, as I mentioned earlier, check out some student sample work either at NHD website or at ours. My next tip is to collaborate with those around you. NHD is truly an interdisciplinary project that can benefit from the expertise of many of your colleagues. Social studies teachers in your building can give you an idea of the historical eras and concepts that students should be familiar with at their grade level. Librarians and media specialists are a great resource to you in reinforcing research skills. We often see social studies and ELA teachers partnering on this project, so they might be a resource to you as well. And you can even enlist outside organizations to help. This past year, every organization that runs public programs learned how to run virtual field trips, so that'll make it easier. You don't have to worry about getting a school bus to go anywhere. You can have someone from, for example, the Maryland Center for History and Culture or another local site projected into your classroom, and they can share some of their artifacts or talk about how to use their online collections. I recommend connecting with other History Day teachers from other schools, and especially teachers, other teachers who have English learners in their classrooms. And then finally, keep parents informed about History Day. Parental involvement is a big indicator for success in History Day, and students stay more engaged with this project when their parents are also engaged. Parents might take their kids to museums to get ideas about this project, or even just talk about it over the dinner table. My next tip is to model and scaffold everything that you do for the History Day project. So every skill that students are learning, every task that you ask them to do, you should give them something to help them through. So first, to model things like full projects, thesis statements, and bibliographies. Make sure students have examples of those so that they know what you are expecting from them. You'll also want to model the skills that they'll be building and the more process-oriented parts of the project. So things like primary source analysis. What does that look like? Research. What are the best ways to do an online search? And even note-taking. You'll want to scaffold their work with primary source analysis tools, a thesis formula or sentence stem, project graphic organizers like the one shown in this picture here with title at the top. You might give them prompts. There are prompt questions on this graphic organizer. You might introduce them to bibliography tools like Noodle Tools or EasyBib. And then finally, the Thinkport inquiry kits, which is a resource that my organization created, and it's a large collection of primary source sets, and I'll talk a little bit more about it later. Finally, shape the project to your students' needs. NHD is very rigid at the contest levels. There are lots of rules and requirements, things that can set students back in the rankings, different barriers to entry. At the classroom level, however, you are welcome to take this curriculum and use what works for your students. Those students who don't fulfill every NHD requirement might not be competitive at a contest, but the contest might not be your goal or theirs. They will still develop academic skills even if they're not aiming for a contest. Next, let the student's first language be an asset. Students are allowed to do research in their first language. They can research a historical event in their own country or culture if they wish, and use their prior knowledge and events that they are more familiar with. If you're using this project as an English language building exercise, you may set limits and ask students to read some materials in English, but they do have freedom about using their first language as well. And I have one small research tip for English learners that I can share. So when researching for a History Day project, we always recommend including not just primary source images, which are very fun and a great way to illustrate your project, but also primary source texts, which can tell us a lot about a historical event more directly. Primary source texts can be difficult for English learners, especially when texts are archaic, poetic, written in dialect, or contain specialized language. So one thing that can help is to help students find primary source texts in HTML format. So in other words, it's something that's in the text of a website rather than just as an image, like many digitized sources appear. It's easy to find HTML versions for well-known primary sources like Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech or Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, but some archives also offer text transcripts of other documents as well, so keep an eye out for those. This is useful because HTML can be easily cut and pasted into things like Google Translate, so students can do a side-by-side text reading. It can be pasted into Rewordify to grade down the reading level of the text. Students can use the Control-F find function to search for words. And they can use Chrome extensions like a read aloud extension or a dictionary extension just to make things a little bit easier. These functions will help make that primary source text more accessible and remove some of the barriers to understanding. This next slide is a sample timeline to plan out the milestone assignments for the project and how it's going to work into your schedule. This one that is shown here is based on a teacher who starts their students on the project at the beginning of the school year in September, and who plans to have students moving on to the district contest. So they've finished with the project before the district contest is due. Contest-bound students are typically done with their projects at the end of January. You do not have to follow this schedule. You are welcome to use the History Day curriculum at any time or for any time span. But whether or not you expect to send students to the district contest, have some sort of a classroom showcase or presentation at the end of the project to give the students the opportunity to share their work and to celebrate their peers and all the work that they've done. I'd like to share again this one resource that you might find useful, whether or not you end up doing History Day. The Thinkport inquiry kits are sets of historical sources about a narrow and specific topic in history. They were developed to help students get ideas for possible History Day topics, to help kickstart their research by giving them those sources to start out with, or also to be a teacher resource that you can use in your classrooms. There are currently 200 kits. They are separated out into different collections for U.S. history, world history, U.S. government, and a small selection of elementary level topics. And this slide gives you a sneak peek of what the inside of an inquiry kit looks like. This kit is centered on immigration to Ellis Island, and you can see it starts with 3 thinking questions at the top to give students something to investigate and to start the process of inquiry. Most kits have 5 primary sources and 1 secondary source, which is the one in the bottom right. The primary sources are varied for different points of entry for all students. There's often a mix of visual and text-based sources, including photos, video clips, maps, illustrations, newspaper articles, interviews, speeches, books, and much, much more. I'll also point out that this image at the top right that leads to the research learning modules, it's a collection of 12 interactive lessons that take students through the different steps of creating a research project. So lots of educators have found those useful as well. At the moment, all of the resources that we offer were designed for on-level native speaker students. However, we would like to see the History Day curriculum made more accessible to English learners. So we have received funding from the Library of Congress through their Teaching with Primary Sources program to do just that. This year, we'll be working with expert teachers to create an NHD for English learners curriculum with teacher resources and student worksheets, and we hope to make those materials available for the next school year. We hope that you'll stay in touch with us for some upcoming opportunities related to this, including next summer's Teacher Institutes, where you can learn more about primary sources and project-based learning and prepare to introduce History Day to your students and take part in some great discussions on how to best serve our students through this curriculum. Also, stay tuned for info about an NHD for English Learners group on the TPS Teachers Network professional networking platform. In the meantime, if you are interested in piloting this program with your English learner students this school year, Maryland History Day staff are available to come to your classroom to get students excited about the project, to share examples, and to help out with the skill building sessions. Well, we're also happy to meet with groups of teachers, either in person or virtually, to discuss how to implement this project. Here are a few ways that you can stay informed about History Day in Maryland. You can sign up for our monthly teacher newsletter, where we share resources and upcoming opportunities. You can attend our monthly teacher Zoom meetings, which gives you the opportunity to meet with other outreach staff online and get advice. You can join our Slack channel, where you can ask questions and get a quick response from staff or connect with colleagues across the state. And finally, you can follow us on Facebook or Twitter, where our handle is @MDHistoryDay. Thanks so much for watching and learning more about National History Day. If you'd like to learn more or chat about how this might work for your students, please don't hesitate to email me at latanat@mdhumanities.org. Have a great day.